demand. If you filled out this table where on the left-hand side you have a price, a potential price of a Snickers bar, and on the right-hand side you fill in for each price how many you would buy at that price. This table is your demand for Snickers bar. We call it a demand schedule. If we were to graph it, we would have a demand curve. This is your demand, right? A particular line on the table would show your quantity demanded at a particular price, right? What causes your quantity demanded to change is just if the price were to change. If you moved up and down on this table because the price is changing around, then all that's changing is your quantity demanded. Your demand itself is not changing, right? You haven't actually changed anything about the table itself since you first wrote down your numbers, how many you would buy. All you're doing is bouncing around within the table. But sometimes something changes in a market or outside a market other than the price. When that happens, you may need to or want to go back to your table, erase all the numbers you originally wrote down, and change them. That is a change in demand, not just a change in your quantity demanded. What are some things that would cause that to happen? That's the focus of this video. One thing that would shift your demand is a change in your income. When you get a raise at work, do you want more of stuff or less of stuff? And the answer is it depends. It depends on what that stuff is. There are two types of stuffs. So there are normal goods and there are inferior goods. A normal good is something we buy more of when we get more income. So called a normal good probably because this is most of the things in our lives. You get a raise at work, you want more stuff in general, usually. So a normal good is something like steak dinners, assuming you like steak, right? For most of us, steak is something that if we have more money, we consume more of it. If we have less money, we consume less of it, right? That means it's a normal good. An inferior good, on the other hand, is something like ramen noodles, a good that we buy less of when we have more income, and we buy more of when we have less income. That's an inferior good. What is obvious here then is that a change in your income will change your demand for goods, right? But which way? It depends. It depends on what type of good we're talking about. But if you've got your table, like the table we started out with for Snickers bars, if you had that table for ramen noodles and you're a college student and you fill in how many packs of ramen you're going to buy at each price, and then all of a sudden you get a job and so your income goes up. Now you may want to go back to the drawing board, go back with your eraser and change those numbers, right? Because something in your life has changed. That's not just a change in the price of ramen. Something has changed that changes your overall feeling about ramen. That's a change, a shift in your demand because of a change in income. So changes in income will cause shifts in demand. Also, prices of related goods. So this requires us to be really precise in how we talk about these things. So we said previously that if price changes, it doesn't change demand. All it changes is your quantity demanded, right? If back at our Snickers bar table, if I told you that the price of Snickers went from $2 to $2.50, it doesn't mean you take an eraser to your table. All it does is it means you go from one spot to another on that table. That's a change in quantity demanded, not a change in demand. But that's if we're talking about the price of the good we're looking at, right? So if we've got a table for Snickers bars and the price of Snickers bars changes, that's a change in quantity demanded for Snickers bars. What if you have a table for Snickers bars, you filled it out, how many you want at each price of Snickers bars, and then I tell you someone's giving away free Milky Ways in the room next door? That may change your entire table how many Snickers bars you're willing to buy at each price, right? So do you see the difference? So the price of Snickers bars changing will just change the quantity demanded of Snickers bars. But the price of a related good may change your entire demand schedule. You might have to go back with an eraser if a related good sees a change in price. So how that works depends on the type of related good. Are the goods complements or are the goods substitutes? So complements, like the picture here, Pib and Red Vines, right? So your snacks and your soda. When the two goods are used together, this means that if the price of Pib were to go up, what's going to happen to your demand for your snack? Your demand for your snack is probably going to go down, right? So you can think about, if you're not familiar with Red Vines, I know that's kind of a regional snack, but you can think about peanut butter and jelly, right? They go together. You use them together. And so if you're currently buying peanut butter and jelly in certain quantities and the price of peanut butter goes up, what's going to happen? Your quantity demanded for peanut butter goes down because the price of peanut butter went up. When your quantity demanded for peanut butter goes down, it's going to mean you want less jelly too, right? So demand for jelly is going to decrease, not because the price of jelly changed, but because the price of a related good changed, right? So if two goods are used together, they're complements, then when the price of good A goes up, your demand for good A goes down, right? And I encourage you, as you're thinking through these, as you're working through problems on this little section, to be sure you tell yourself the whole story, right? Talk yourself through the story. This is one place where my brain tries to trick me. It says complements, then of course they go together. Price goes up, demand goes up. That's not right. That's your brain tricking you because that's what complements seems to mean to you, right? But really talk yourself through the story. Complements. That means I use the goods together, which means if the price of one of them goes up, I can't afford as much peanut butter anymore, which means I don't want as much jelly anymore. So the price of peanut butter went up, the demand for jelly goes down, right? That's complements. Talk yourself through these stories. And substitutes. What's the story here? So Domino's Pizza versus Pizza Hut. You like Domino's, you usually buy Domino's, but these are goods that can be used in place of each other. What happens if Pizza Hut has a really good sale this week? If the price of Pizza Hut goes down, then what happens to your demand for Domino's? It's going to go down, right? You're going to switch to the substitute because the price of that substitute changed. So not a change in price of Domino's itself, so it's not just a quantity demanded change for Domino's, it's a change in price for Pizza Hut of a related good to Domino's, which means it's going to cause you to go back and change your entire table, your entire demand curve for Domino's. So here's that peanut butter and jelly example. So the event is that the price of peanut butter increases. When the price of peanut butter increases, look over here on the left-hand side. This is going to be our market for peanut butter. What happens in the market for peanut butter when the price of peanut butter increases? We'll see a movement along the demand curve for peanut butter, right? Because this is where we're looking at a table for peanut butter and the price for peanut butter has changed. All we do is we move from one spot in the table to another spot in the table. The table itself hasn't changed. It's just a price change in our market. So it's just a quantity demanded change. It's just a move along the curve, right? In the jelly market, on the other hand, we have not seen a price change in jelly. We've seen a price change in something related to jelly. And so if we're looking at our table for jelly, I'm not telling you, hey, move from one line to another in this table because the price of jelly has changed. The price of jelly has not changed. What has changed is the price of the thing you eat with jelly, right? So now that the price of peanut butter is higher, your quantity demanded for peanut butter is lower. You've gone from 4 peanut butters to 2 peanut butters, which means you also need less jelly. So you're going to go in and you're going to change your entire demand curve, your entire demand table or schedule for jelly is going to change. So hopefully this illustrates that that sort of nuanced difference between a price change in the market you're looking at versus a price change of a related good, right? But the point here being that the price of a related good will affect your demand for a particular good. So another thing that may shift your demand is a change in taste or preferences. So if something comes in style or goes out of style, right? Comes into season or goes out of season, then of course we see fashion is a good example of this. Of course, we see a lot of shifts, changes in your demand for a particular good. It doesn't matter if the price changed or not. I just don't want it anymore because it's no longer fashionable or no longer in style. And then the last three are pretty simple, so they're all on one slide together. Number 4 is price expectations. So what do you expect to happen to the price tomorrow? That will change your demand today, right? So our consumption today may depend on what we think the price will be tomorrow. If you know that your favorite department store is going to have a giant sale starting tomorrow, what does that do to your demand at that department store today? It goes down. You're not running out to buy things today if you know there's going to be a sale starting tomorrow, right? If you know that a hurricane is about to hit the coast and affect gas prices, what does that do to your demand for gas today? Goes up. You're going to run out and fill up your tank today because you don't want to wait until later after that hurricane hits and destroys refineries or whatever it does and causes gas prices to go up, right? So what you think might happen tomorrow is going to affect what you do today in terms of your demand for goods and services. Number 5 is a little bit obvious. The number of buyers is going to affect the demand for a good. So the more individuals there are in a market, then the more market demand there is. So this is to say that demand is affected by things like migration, immigration, baby booms, all that sort of stuff. If we've got more people, then we have more demand. If we have fewer people, then we have less demand, right? And then number 6, taxes and subsidies. So excise tax is just a tax on a particular product, is what excise tax means. Raises the cost to consumers. This is not the same thing as a price change because it's not an actual change in the market price. It's a change in what you pay for something, but it comes as a tax, not as a price. So it's a little bit different from a price change, and what it does is it actually changes your entire demand for a good. So if I gave you that table when we came into class, you filled in how many Snickers bars you want at each price, and then I told you for each Snickers bar that you buy, I'm also going to charge you a 50-cent tax. Now you're probably going to go back with your eraser and say, oh wait, well then I don't want as many at each price because now I know that, okay, I'm going to pay the price plus a tax. So that changes my demand, right? So taxes are something that they're not the same as a price change, but they're going to affect your demand for a particular good. And on the other hand, a subsidy is the opposite of a tax. This is when the government pays you to consume something, or helps to pay the cost of something. So when the government, for example, subsidizes your education, then it encourages you to consume more of it. You can afford more now because someone else is paying for part of it. So here are a couple of examples. Here is the market for Big Macs, right? What happens in the market for Big Macs if the price of a Burger King Whopper falls? Notice this is not the price of Big Macs falling. So we won't just see a movement along the demand curve. We're going to see a shift in demand altogether, and it's a leftward shift, meaning down, lower demand for Big Macs now. Why? Because a Whopper is a substitute for a Big Mac. Even if you prefer Big Macs, if a Whopper gets cheap enough, it's another burger, right? So demand for Big Macs will go down when the price of the Big Mac's substitute falls. Here is the market for steak dinners. What happens when you get a pay raise at your job? We discussed this previously. Usually you'll want more steak dinners. And if you're an outlier and you don't like steak or something like that, then just read these questions as what you know, stereotypically what we know about steak dinners, right? So you get a pay raise at your job. Stereotypically, most of us would want more steak dinners. We'd see a shift outward, a shift to the right in our demand. So again, don't think up and down. This is a little tip. Don't think about these things shifting up and down. Think about them shifting left and right, like a number line. Left is less, and right is more. Right. So an outward, a more shift, more demand means a shift to the right. Here's another example: generic cheese. What happens in the market for generic cheese when you get a pay raise at your job? Your demand for generic cheese goes down because now you're going to buy the expensive stuff that you can't pronounce, right? Usually demand for most generic brands goes down when people's incomes increase. Market for pizza. What happens when the price of your favorite beverage falls? Your demand for pizza would increase. Assuming you like to have a beverage with your pizza, you'll be able to consume more beverages, which means you'll be able to consume more pizza. Here's the market for oranges. If doctors discover that oranges cure baldness, what happens in the market for oranges? We get a gigantic increase in demand for oranges. Everyone who is bald or might go bald is going to run out and grab oranges. So shifts in demand are caused by things happening other than price changes. So back to our initial, our beginning of this whole thing. Remember, if the price of the good you're focusing on is the only thing that changes, then you're not going to see a shift in demand. You'll just see a movement along the demand curve that's already there. If something else changes other than the price of the good you're focusing on, then you have the potential to see an actual shift in demand where, okay, you're going to go back and erase those numbers that you had written and put down new numbers because now you have new information.